more talks, more conversation. So, Joms, why is it that so many people reject the Bible itself, and most people run with the first thing saying it's what the white man gave us, it's what they used to control us during slavery? That's one thing I can't get past when I'm talking to certain people about anything that's related to Christianity or the Bible itself. The first thing they bring up and throw in my face is, it's what the white man gave us. And what would you say about that? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to stick with what you know, and what you believe. Spending a lot of time, wasting time arguing with people is oftentimes casting your pearls before swine. That's something that I used to do, but I learned that it's some people's choice to believe what they want to believe, no matter what you tell them, no matter what research you give them, documentation, even the best explanation in the world, because a lot of them choose to believe. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Arguing with people is often like casting your pearls before swine, because they choose to believe something. Despite whatever argument you give them, whatever evidence you give them, whatever research you show them, whatever documentation, they've chosen to believe something a lot of times because of their emotional state. When you get to a point where you decide that you hate a group of people, like the white man, because of what was done to people, primarily done to people who you don't even know, that have been dead long before anybody had any idea that you might be born, right? And you decided, I hate these people. Then whatever you feel like they have given you is just rejected. But it's just like YouTube, which this video is on YouTube. It's very simple. Something like the Bible can be used for good things, or it can be used for bad things. YouTube's on the internet, right? So the internet can be used to spread child porn on the dark web, or it can be used for numerous good things. It can be used for what we're doing right here. It can be used to help people to learn things. It can be used to minister to people. There's so many different things that you can do with it if you take its original design and it could be intended for good, and then you twist it and use it improperly. Then you can use it for evil, and that is what slave masters did. Is they actually twisted it to use it for the purpose of advancement of slavery. And so as a result of that, a lot of people wrongfully say, oh, this is what the white man gave us, because in truth the Bible is a collection of mostly letters and scrolls that were written thousands of years ago. And a lot of people think that that's all there is. But no, those 66 books were chosen by a group of people who decided what should go in and what should be left out. It's not the totality of all scripture.
Right.
So if you were to study, say, for example, the book of Enoch, you will find that white people were not created and didn't exist until Noah. And so if you also look at the geography of the Bible, where everything takes place, then the idea that white man created it is almost the dumbest thing that anybody can ever say at any point ever in life. Like, you have to literally be retarded to believe that, right? But people are retarded. That's my personal view. I think that mostly we go outside, we're surrounded by idiots.
Right.
And that's just a fact. And I think that most people are ignorant, willfully ignorant. Some are belligerently ignorant. You know, willful ignorance is, I don't know, I don't really care to know. You know, then there's just ignorant, where it's like, nobody taught me and that's why I don't know. But what we have today is we have belligerently ignorant people who, no matter what you tell them, or no matter what's exposed, they get angry if you teach them something other than what they want to know. They actually get mad at you.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're angry because you told them something. This complete idiocy.
Yeah.
But it's the norm today. It used to be the exception. You know, one thing that's a fact in my view is that common sense is no longer common. If obviously everyone who wrote the Bible was from Northern Africa and the Middle East, it kind of goes to show, you know, particularly the timing of the events, going back that, you know, the thousands of years ago. It didn't come from white people. I mean, it didn't come, you know, from you know, the Vikings, or, you know, what was you know, back then the barbaric people of the what is now England, the Anglo-Saxons, the Celts,
stuff about,
or any. It didn't come from that. What happened is that all of these brown-skinned people, they wrote these letters in these books, and the white people of the Roman Empire, because they were in control of all of the nations in that area, they got a hold of it, and then they began to whitewash it by using depictions of white people, replacing the true depictions of the brown-skinned people, some of whom were black, like African black, and replacing them with white people in the pictures. That's where you get the white Jesus from, and the white disciples. For example, when Leonardo da Vinci painted the Last Supper, it's Jesus and his 12 disciples, right? So you have Jesus, Yeshua, and his 12 disciples, and he painted them all as basically to look like black people, okay? And the reason why he did that is because he understood that they would have been brown-skinned people, and so they were all brown-skinned. Well, the Roman Catholic Church wasn't having that, so they told him that he had to redo it, and he redid it using his family members as model faces for the painting.
Wow.
Okay, and the reason why that is real simple. The Romans, when they conquered lands and things like that, they always wanted the gods to look like them. So when the gods looked like them, then it created a superiority complex for them and an inferiority complex for those other people. So they wanted their children to grow up thinking that the gods look like Romans, and Romans look like the gods. And so the same thing continued through the years, the generation, because let's keep it real. When you think of political and economic power, there's not too many black faces that pop up in your mind. When you think about who controls most of what goes on this planet, right? Who's got the most power? If you were to name a race, you would say it's the Caucasians, the white race. And so as a result, you would associate that with power, right? Well, the imagery played a lot into that. They wanted Jesus to be white, Moses to be white. Every character who was not white
Right.
to be white in your mind, so that as a whatever you were, you would associate them with being closer to God's, closer to your God, whoever that God may have been. It's not that the Romans necessarily cared that it was Jesus or whatever. Every single God from every religion, when they conquered, they wanted them to look like Romans.
Right.
And it continued from there. And so this whole idea that white people gave it to us is like, it's like really ridiculous, because not only did they not write anything in it, not a word of it, okay, but they also are only the ones who kept it. They in other words, they maintained the documents. And so however it is that we ended up with these documents, which became the Bible, we have now control over it for ourselves. So it doesn't matter that, okay, when they went to West Africa and they bought slaves from black African people.
Yeah.
Who had enslaved black African people, and these Muslims who sold black people to white people because they brought them over here. And Islam is all about that, if you read the Quran. But if they brought them over here, and when they brought them over here, then they gave them the Bible. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
The fact is that they used the Bible in a wrongful manner.
Right.
Slavery in the Bible, it has different meanings, and there were different rules and laws, and it had more to do with usually debt owed, and there was a period where no matter what the debt was owed, if a person was working for someone, they generally lived in their house and they worked for them until they paid off the debt. And if the debt wasn't paid off when the year of Jubilee came, then they had to release that person. That person could choose to stay. But when they stayed in their house, let's say like if your parents owed my parents, well, golly, you're so much younger than me. So if your parents owed me like $1 million and they sent you to come live with me to work off the debt,
Hey, it's messed up.
I had to treat you like you were one of my children, not beat you and feed you, chitlins. You can have the chitlins, we eat the rest of the hog. You can have the brains and the other stuff that we don't want. I would have had to treat you like a child of mine, and you had to respect me like I was your parent. And although you would work and clean the house and things like that, at the same time, there was a respect for your time and your life and who you were. I wasn't trying to inflict pain on you to make you do anything, you know, because that's not how the law of the Hebrews was. So to use the Bible as slaves obey your masters, that kind of way, thing like that, it was an interpretation issue. It still is to this day, of people not really understanding what it meant and what it means, and how those people were really more indentured servants than slaves. You know, when and this word comes from the King James Version. And the correct word in almost every case would be servant and not slave. But the King James Version was written in 1611. It was translated into the English language of that time. And there were cases in the translation where the translation was really way off, you know, but that was not way off in that day. It's way off for now.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because there are a whole lot more words that we can use now to amplify, which is one good reason to have an amplified version of the Bible, but to amplify based on what the original Hebrew meant.
Yeah.
Okay, which most of the Bible was written in Aramaic.
Yeah.
Which predates the actual modern Hebrew language. But if you go back to that and get the real modern day interpretation from what those original words were, then they would have different meaning. And if you understand the context, taking things out of context is huge.
It is, and it gets on my nerves.
Yeah, it's huge. If you take anything somebody says, and you edit it, for example, and you take out of a whole 30-minute speech that somebody says, and you take 15 seconds of one sentence and say this is what they said, you're taking it out of the context.
Right.
So a person could be quoting someone else, and you could have on video or audio recorded that person saying what someone else said,
right,
and then you can play it back and say this is what they said when they were obviously quoting someone else. That's taken out of context. So a lot of things can be said that are taken out of context. It's not just in the Bible, but the Bible has so many portions of it that have been taken out of context and have been used as doctrine improperly. But people today, they're just not as intelligent as prior generations. That's just my personal view. You know, people were more focused. They had better attention spans. They read more in previous generations, and this generation is not a reading generation. And so they take a lot of foolishness and they don't research, and they accept what they're told. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, they just accept what they're told. There's not a lot of depth in their thought processes about what they're being told. Even stuff that's just obviously foolishness is accepted because somebody said it on TV, you know, or whatever. It's just, this is what the world is now. Like in the first world of the United States of America, especially. I can name some other countries where it's just as bad, but especially here. I mean, it's just people are so busy being entertained.
Yeah.
And they're so entertained that they don't know anything important. You see what I'm saying? And so it's entertainment is destroying this country. That's what it is. That's what it's doing.